Hi, welcome to the Quantum Playground, and I'm BZ, and Jeannie's joining me, and we're going to play with navigating faith versus fear through co-opted light and dark symbols and symbology, and a whole bunch of other stuff that all weaves into that as we've been playing with that a little bit before we went on camera. Hey, Jeannie,
Hi,
I'm glad you're here.
me too. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a
So,
big topic, and you brought it up, so jump in and we'll play.
yes, it is very expansive, and just what we mentioned just before we turned on, it was very good clarification in the sense that um, if we don't have coherence with our heart and brain and allow the intelligence of our heart to lead the way, we can easily become led astray by all of the symbols and whatnot because they're everywhere. And the ones that, well, they all have meaning for each human, each individual, each perspective. Everyone has a different feeling about what they see because they've either been indoctrinated to think and see it as a certain way, or um, they've had a personal experience with it a certain way. So I was just I was just wanting to have the conversation about these kind of things because there's a lot coming out right now, like that Out of the Shadows movie, and it was talking about this Satanism and the all of the sacrificing and all that business that's going on somewhere, supposedly. But I had experience with it 30 years ago and was in a church experience, and I've been a seeker of truth and have managed to find things that are typically off the beaten path. And so when I saw that, I thought about what I'd learned about decades ago, and and there's so much involved with it as far as energy and vibration and attention paid to something, and the feeling of love, the fear, and what that creates in your experience, and us all being co-creators. We're all doing this dance together with our thoughts and feelings and observation. And the fear lends for these things like, you know, satanic child sacrifice, murder, all that business.
Right.
And the love lends to healing and coherence and bliss and all that business. But it's all interconnected and woven and energetic, and we're all doing it, and it's all the same soup, if you will. And so there are just so many aspects of it, and so many things that I've come to see myself in my intentional open spiritual seeking journey.
Right.
And I feel like it would be beneficial to have a conversation about, to bring these things out of the shadows, to say, hey, this could be happening, and some people think, oh, that's just, the programmed ones that are in their brain, that are deep asleep in the fog of, the spoon-fed media or whatever it is that they're under the spell of,
Right.
have a hard time looking at this stuff saying, oh yeah, that could be real. They're like, oh, that's not real, so it's a matter of bringing things to light that that I personally have had an experience of touching on, and I have been there's been a lot of drama and then some victimization, and also integrating my fear and my faith, and coming to a place where um, I've taken responsibility for my life and the things that I'm not so proud of that I've done, and um, and knowing that when I have experiences like that, my inner being knows and creates something greater. And so it's all this dance of, of energy, of vibration, of thinking and feeling and creating, and owning that which you've done that may be of the dark, but allowing yourself to feel your worthiness and love and experiencing that of the light.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I forgot to say the date, but it fits in right here perfectly. It's April 29th, and we are clicking fully over now into transparency with all the things coming out and the full exoneration that will be officially happening in documented, tangible ways for General Michael Flynn, and all the threads that that pulls with Heather and all those things. I mean, everything is connected. And so it's important to realize that we are on, you know, the starting line of full, tangible, very visible, wholesale, obvious disclosure of all of these things. It's not just those who are awake, not just those who are digging, not just those who have been involved in all of this, or those who are just newly waking up and figuring it out, right? But this will be all across, as you say, all across the board, and people will be saying, "Oh, you know, that's couldn't be right," or whatever it is. And so part of that that's also involved in that is that, as you and I were talking about before we started, the symbols, and what a beautifully devious way to do it. So a lot of symbols have been co-opted, just to say it in very linear terms, by the dark. And so you could look at symbols that are related around pedophilia. You could look at symbols that have to do with symbolism or iconic things, and you say, oh, well, that's, you know, Luciferian, or that's dark, or that's this and that thing. And yes, they have been co-opted, and yes, they have been used for that. And if you just look at something from the surface perspective and not feeling into your heart about it, but only your brain is running the show, as you talked about, you know, finding that coherence with them, where the heart shows and knows the way, and the lower mind comes in service, you know, as your number one, as a la Star Trek, you know, and can make, you know, make the different things about researching and that kind of stuff. So and so there's a propensity, a lot of people, as they start to wake up, they may find something in a conspiracy realm, and it's not a theory, it's a conspiracy, and that's a fact, and you can see how wide it is. But in the conspiracy realm, that may be involving different symbols, and so the propensity is someone who's just reading and going, oh, well, that's a bad symbol. So now if they see it in some other place, someone maybe who's they're doing some information, or they're gaining some in a conversation, whatever, someone who is in the light and all those kinds of things, and they are talking about the same kind of symbols, from it's a very shallow glancing at it, no tuning in, no using your own discernment meters, and they go, oh, okay, well, what, that's bad because I just woke up to that. So that means that if this other person is using it or talking about it, or bringing it up, then they're bad too. So it's interesting in the title, you know, navigating faith versus fear. Well, right there, the being in this example has used, is just waking up and starting to notice things. Excellent. They haven't realized how to think with your heart and not your brain yet, and they don't even realize that, wait a minute, what does that mean and how do you do that, right? So they just go like this. Well, in that action, they're actually just taking all of the programming, all of the false construct, in their excitement about waking up and uncovering these things, and they got to tell everybody, and everybody who's gone through this process in various ways can remember, you know, that same thing that they, you know, because we all do it in different, you know, very similar ways, in different ways, our own way. And so what the being has done is now turn the whole thing, well, that's bad. So again, you have polarity, you have dark to light, you have judgment, and no tuning in fully, no discernment fully, no investigating on anything but just a superficial level of what's really going on. So just on that piece, the symbolisms and the symbology and the symbols, pretty much all of them have been co-opted from the light to the dark. And the reason that I call and describe it in a way, characterize it as being really brilliant and very clever way to do it from those that are polarized service to self and have the dark orientation is because what better way to take people who are waking up, they find out about the symbol and they do exactly what I just described. So now they've shunted themselves in a box. They're kind of fearful of what's going on. They don't know how to navigate it. And they're then projecting, right? I mean, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Until they start to, hey, stop. Until they start to feel into and be able to navigate things, right? So for a long time, they could be turned off and go back in the box again. Well, that's
Right.
pretty brilliant, use of
Yes.
symbols and symbology to control, to yet again control
Yeah.
people, and yet again have divisiveness, and yet again, to have this judgment and going out at each other so that there's fracturing.
Right. Yes. Hello, Keegan.
I think there was a deer just about to walk in the garden, and he was like, "Hey, you're not in there."
Well, yes, absolutely. And I actually have had some experience with that in my own walk, because I experienced my power, decades ago, and I was kind of put in my place, not really my place, but I was kind of taken back down out of fear because I felt the power, I knew it was real, and there were things that because of my programming um, appeared as more powerful than me,
Right.
and so I was afraid of them. And it is very ingenious and very tricky, and thank you for articulating that, because that's kind of the essence of what I was wanting to bring to light here. So you thank you for the beautiful way that you put that. So I also came across something yesterday that Dr. Joe Dispenza, are you familiar?
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to an interview with him and Lilu Mace, or Maste, I'm not sure how you say her name. And he articulated something, and I was like, oh my God. It was, what he said was, he described what had happened to me, and it just it was like a light bulb came on. I've had experiences, what you call alchemical epiphanies.
Right.
And I've had several of them over the decades, but they are very real and they are very powerful. And he apparently has people around him that have these instruments that can measure brain coherence and all of that stuff. And so when people are having these experiences, their brain is firing very coherently in certain ways. And so, and when the body is so wonderfully and beautifully made, and just so I personally don't think there are words to describe how amazing the cells of our bodies are, and what they do and how they function, and that they create through our thoughts and feelings and all this business. But he was saying something about how, the brain will fire in a different way when you have these experiences, and then you're able to see other things.
Right.
And you have that ability to see more. And I personally believe that there's a brain in our heart, and that there's something that's more intelligent within our heart that can, that is way more intelligent.
Right, it's been quantified, so people can go do research in the HeartMath Institute with Joe Dispenza has done research with them, but so that has been quantified, that it's far more, the brain in the heart has between the the electromagnetic field that it generates is, this is a wrong statistic, but it's something akin to 10 or more times greater than that in not only in your regular brain, but in you can correlate it to the amount of energy created by a power plant.
Wow.
So it just a little bit of what's generated by the heart brain, you know, it's something along the lines of it's more energy, more juice of the electromagnetic juice that powers things than what it would take a day or so from a power plant to do. Just one being.
Wow. You know, I have heard that, but I didn't realize that they had figured that out
Yeah.
too. But I mean, that's like mind blowing.
Yeah.
When you
I
think
mean,
about
that
what you
don't
said.
quote me on the percentages,
Right.
but
Right.
it's you know it's like using that as an analogy. It's actually more powerful than that. So it's very
Yes.
interesting that that's happening, and that you brought that up. It's that as we start to navigate, you know, waking up, or you know, we're infinite, so there's always going to be more revelation, there's always going to be more expansion, there's always going to be more lifting out of a narrow constricted focus and letting things in, with more information coming in. And so how do we navigate? And as you said, you know, in those experiences that you had, and then hearing him describe kind of the processing, right, from a linear scientific and quantum level all at the same time that's going
Right.
on,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you know what you experienced, you know what you saw, and then when he described that in more of a tangible, touchable way, you thought,
And
yeah, so you thought, whoa, I remember what it was experienced, and now I can kind of like see the little scientific diagrams and the little synapses and all that kind of stuff. And my guess is that when you experienced that moment of what he was describing, the reason it was so powerful was you reopened the energetic envelope of maybe all of them, or the last, or one particular alchemical epiphany, and you experienced it again, and probably opened up more of the breadth and depth of the information that was involved in that.
wow.
That was just my sense of when you were describing that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that aspect of it, but I would say yes, that feels right. And these alchemical epiphanies aren't just, it's how I feel
Right.
in these moments. And the knowing, it's
Mhm.
like I can't describe or articulate to somebody who I'm having a conversation with about these things that these emails I'm forwarding to them on the internet about all the business that's going on. But I know in my heart that it's real. I know that it is.
Right.
And they're like, oh, if you believe that, you're this, or, you know, come on, Jeanie, really?
Right.
And they, so when I heard Dispenza say that, and he talked about the changes in the brain when you have these experiences in
Right.
this brain, it made sense to me. It's like, well, of course that's why they can't see it, because they may not have had this
Right.
chemical epiphany, this heart opening, this, you know, because they're stuck in the programming of what they've learned up here. It's like, oh, you know, use your brain, reason, blah blah blah. And I'm a very intelligent person. I do use my brain, but there are things that I come across that I just know that I know that I know that I resonate with, that this is real, this is true. And some of it, it's like, well, I don't want this to be true for in my experience, because some of it's pretty, you know, talk about dark and light. I'm like, okay, thank you. I see that that's still there, but let's just focus on this, because I'm not gonna expand that and create more of that.
Right.
So it's good that it's coming to light, so to speak. It's good that it's coming out in the open. But I, you know, also more of the law of attraction and choose to focus on the love and appreciation and those types of things to expand that energy, as opposed to look at this stuff and go, oh, shit, this stuff that I learned about 30 years ago or 40 years ago or however long it was, and the angel and demonic and all that business, and how it's really real and it's really happening, and oh, shame on me for not standing up and saying something. Oh, bad Jeanie for putting her light under a basket. But I haven't tried to put my light under a basket. I've tried to continue to grow my light and expand myself, and I have grown leaps and bounds from where I was. I mean, I used to think that I was small, unworthy being. I used to think that, I was bound by this guilt thing that I grew up learning. So I've come to see who I am and appreciate who I am, and embrace the awesomeness of my being, that is interconnected with all the other beings. And so my heart is to shine the light and to help everyone to see the beautiful light of all of this, and to not be drowned in the fear of the overwhelming information that's coming in to these beings that have been programmed to think, look at these symbols and think this certain way. So I'm just here to say I love you all, and I am a testament to the fact that you can go through the dregs of hell and experience heaven right here on this beautiful plane, quantum dimensionality, whatever this is that you think this is.
But you're absolutely right. The reason that you got to where you were wasn't so much that you mentioned law of attraction, and so focusing on it, yes, but you weren't pushing it away either. You have done your own integration, or you wouldn't be able to have come to a holding with it. Because you can't, if you push the dark away, there is never a holding, because you're source. And source has all of the frequencies. It's all of everything.
Yes.
And it's energy frequencies, and is how that energy frequency is played with and used as a creation point, whatever the being is. So if you're pushing away, you're resisting, so that's going to persist. You're also not going to be able to have a holding. And right now what we're doing is we're unwinding and unbinding all of this. So in order for that to happen, there's got to be a holding of it. And as all of this comes down, those who have been in the place, and this is a difficult topic on a whole range of things, because depending on where you are and what your experience is with it, directly or indirectly, what you've done in working to bring it down, so there's a whole range for a whole lot of beings, or just meeting it for the very first time and having a clue. But as we go forth from source to no source, every being and every entity that they are, however that takes shape over the millennia and infinities of their journeys, goes forth and goes all the way out to the end. So if you're holding that not just as an intellectual exercise, because we're all one, and then we go out and sources goes forth to no source, then actually you've been all of those things. Because when you go as far as you possibly can out, you've gone as far as you can in a polarized way to the constricted and the negative, right? So right this moment, all these beings here now, especially those who have already woken up, who are doing the work, who are involved in bringing all of this false construct down, they're badasses that were once very bad badasses. Now, because if you're going to bring it all to a close and you're going to wrap it up and you're going to crumble it all down, you better have the experts on how to do both things, right? How to go the farthest out to the very furthest reaches and the constricted negative, right, service to self, and made the choice over various amounts of eons and time and transformation and in entities or embodiments, or and all of those things, right, turning around to come back to have the consciousness, to have, because it's a choice, because that's choosing, and that's how you have more and more expansion into fullness of the light, the integrated of the dark and the light of the whole, because it's just energy. It's only when we have a constricted view of it that it's good or bad. It's
Right.
simply energy and how you wield it, because we think we're small, right? So
Yeah.
when we realize that we're big and we wield it, again, the badass dudes and dudettes are out there wielding, yes. So right here, right now, all those that are bringing it all down are masters of it because they went out and they went to the depths and dove deep, right? And then kept churning and kept making choices and kept integrating and kept coming back to light and expansion, right? So that's why we're here now. This wouldn't be happening now if those players were not in place to do that, because they wouldn't be strong enough. They wouldn't be resourceful enough. They wouldn't be on some levels canny enough with the ability to read the waters, read the energy, have a prescience and a precognize to go, oh, okay, we gotta cover this, we gotta cover that, we gotta cover this, because we want to make sure that's all boxed in. We're all sewn up tight, and you can do that from the linear level of Durham or all these different things. But it's also multidimensional, because we can just bring down the linear and that won't do anything, because the linear is to some extent an illusory nature until you hold it in the multidimensional. So it's a lot to play into. It's heavy stuff.
Hmm. I
It's also
love,
beautiful stuff.
yeah, I love your ability to articulate everything you just said. That was great. So, um,
And why your topic is so important is to navigate that, because on the faith and fear, so in just that bit that I talked about there, okay, well, a lot of people brought up a lot of fear, a lot of, well, not you but not me, right? And that's how we have to navigate all of this. And the faith, again, because everything has that inverted nature to it. So look at all of the faiths as in religions, and the religious faith and the indoctrination there, the twist, the inversion. Just wait till people realize what certain cities within a country, its own
right? City
country.
state, city states.
Right. Just look at the Pope and the quotes he's been tweeting out recently, and you'll get it. So it's happening that all of this as is coming to light, because that's the energy. And so the faith in the title is the same thing like the symbols that have been co-opted, and the symbolism and the symbology that has all been co-opted. That faith has been co-opted and inverted in a way in all of the different religions, because they're all used as tools. Now the crystalline energies, the Christ centered energy, and I don't say that from a denomination or a faith
Right.
based way. I say it from the energetic way. And so
Yeah.
then again, that's a thing that people have to then navigate. Well, the faith is not something outside. True faith that you have the power of, where you're not small, is
Yeah.
not something outside of you. Because
Right.
when you get to the point, you realize you're the only one here. You're source, and you're the only one here. And there is nothing outside of you. All of the galaxies, all of the multiverses, all that is inside of you. When you go into all of that, you're in all of the stuff, that you could look at Hubble and everything. It's all inside of us, each one
You
of us.
know, I had an experience. I did a meditation workshop, and I won't mention which one that it was, but there was a moment that we were doing a meditation, and they were talking about, the universe, and we were going inside of our heart of hearts, and allowing ourselves to see what was there. And I had this vision of myself in this. It's like I was sitting in a little cubby, and there was a hole, and it was like the cosmos was there, right there in my heart of hearts. And it was the way that it felt when I was in that moment was like I was floating in a sea of bliss.
Yes.
So it's very mind blowing to think about that concept.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sorry, my phone's doing something. Okay. Um, but yeah, that's right.
And also, all of that is there, which is another way to realize that you're not small. You're absolutely magnificent. And you have the capability and the power to do all things. So if you have a thought, you create that thought, and you create with that thought.
Right. Yep.
And it now we're realizing and coming to own up to it, claiming it, owning it, knowing it, that we do have that power, that we are that powerful. And so it's time to wield that with absolute 100% responsible, be accountable, and be liable for that. And we're not newbies at just, kind of playing with energy. We're actually coming into masteryship of that. And that's why all of this moment here is now happening, where it all is coming down. Because as it implodes, we now have, I'd say, it's the real Big Bang comes out, and the new things that we are creating, because every being has, all of you is imploding into you. So source is fully coming in embodiment in you, in a physical, tangible, touchable reality, at a different vibrational frequency rate, a different consciousness capability rate. And it's, because it can't be any other way, it's creating a whole new vibrational landscape that would have, a table or a chair or houses or ways of doing things, or co-creating together, or now called businesses, wherever it is, right? And that's what's happening. But all of the stuff that's lower, that is that faith and fear, that kind of that push me pull you, right, in the polarized sense. And the symbols, as we talked about, the symbols and the symbol, well, that's a bad symbol, right? Well, what's the origin? What was the frequency origin of that symbol? Take it, maybe it's a unicorn, or maybe it's a butterfly. You could take all sorts of things, right? And when the first being, what's the etymology of that symbol? Well, they know the origination of that, right? And
Right.
so
Yeah.
they met that something was happening. They decoded the energy frequency from that, and it told a story. And so they shared that experience, that alchemical epiphany for them, and the connection of the meaning of their power meeting that energy frequency, and that became a symbol for that. So it was like a shorthand. It was a condensed way to condense the story into how to play with those things, right? So if you can go to the beginning of what that is, you'll see a lot of things that of where the symbols have been co-opted. We're circling to the full encompassing now and coming back, linear speak would be saying coming back around to it, although it's revealing itself as if for the very first time. Does that make sense? And the same thing, that their origination point was of a dark, constricted, right? I think that's the same as happening with that as well. And how do you know the difference? You feel it. You use your sensory array. You use your discernment. You come from the heart and the heart brain and the knowingness of it. You mean it. You connect with it, right? Instead of thinking it. Well, that, category. Now, the thinking part can help you with navigation if it's secondary. If it's not leading the way, but it's going, okay, digging, doing research, what's the etymology of this and how does this happen and what's the story behind that and what are the things that came out. So that is a way to do it, research from a linear sort and from a quantum and a multidimensional sort. And then that all brings information back in for all of you, each being, to then integrate it and whole it and go, oh, okay, now I can feel into this. And there's always room for expansion because we're eternal. So people will do it in different ways depending on where they individually are on their path, on their navigation of something. And for them at that moment, it's absolutely right. It's perfect because they're the only expert for them. And so nobody else, what everybody else is doing, someone else may have another experience of that and another level or layer of integration to that. They are both correct for where they each are. And I guess that's another thing that's hard sometimes for people to understand and navigate, because they look at it and hold it from the linear brain where there's light, it's polarized. There's light and there's dark. There's right and there's wrong. This is the way it is, and that's not the way it is. Right?
Yeah.
And as you go, have a few alchemical epiphanies and you go, whoa, then you're looking at things from a bilocational, multilocational frame, and you're realizing that it's this and this and this and this, and they are all so.
Yeah. Yeah. When you start having the ability to sense life in that way, and it's hard for my brain to comprehend, because when I start thinking about and feeling about everything happening at once, like now is all we have.
Yep.
Now is the moment. The present is where our power is. This is where we create from. This is where we be. And I've in my past, I did a lot of worry. So that was looking at my past experience and fearing my future experience, and oh, there's so many reasons that put me in that mindset. The end of the world is coming, or what, whatever worries that I had in my brain, and all of that detracted from being present in this moment.
Right.
Of just being with what is, just breathing and noticing where I'm at, noticing what I'm feeling, noticing what's going on around me. And a lot of what I've been experiencing, more and more and more is intentionally, like waking up and intentionally, first thing, noticing that I'm awake, and taking captive my thoughts in a positive way, and saying, thank you for this breath of life, thank you for whatever, and just settling into appreciation in my heart, and then going into my day and noticing what comes, the synchronicity of my car in traffic, or the song that comes on that makes me laugh out loud because I was just thinking that, or the beautiful design that the clouds made in the sky, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my interaction with other beings and the conversations that are had, or the, you know, it's just really, for me, come to intense focus that I am actively dancing with other beings and thinking and saying things. And I've even noticed, actually, and I wish I could remember what happened, but there was a situation where I was having a conversation with someone and I said something that was really pretty out of character for me, but I noticed that it was coming from their point of attraction. It was, they had a point of attraction that allowed for this thing to come, and I was, you know, being a cooperative component. I
Right.
just said something and then I'm like, why did I say that? It's so weird. But I didn't say that out loud. I was just thinking that so weird in my head, like, huh, that was really interesting. So I think it's fascinating, the dance that we all do together. And I'm noticing that the thoughts and intentions that I've had for a long time are coming to fruition in a lot of this stuff that's happening now. And part of me, like that little, what Smarmy would say, oh, you think you're responsible for all this, that, you know, blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, I do. You know, in a good way. And I've, you know, I've owned my crap, so to speak. But
Right.
I'm also owning that, hey, I've had some very out loud, intense, alchemical epiphany moments where I've wanted to save the world, and I've had this energy of wanting to just put myself out there to help and help everyone
Right.
feel that bliss that I was feeling in those moments. And so, and I know that I'm not alone in this. I know that there are a lot of us out there who have had these experiences, and I just hope that, I just want everyone to feel the magnificence of their own being, to
Mm-hmm.
feel their connection with all that is, and to know that no matter what's going on out here, it's going out there because you've allowed it in here. And so when one can feel that love and appreciation and awe for life, and knowing of the dance of expansion, then they can look out there and go, oh, it's gonna be all right. I don't really like this part of it, but it'll be okay.
Yeah, well, and it's out there because we all put it out there, because
Right.
we're
Yes.
all in that stage where we're on on various levels, and we'll all describe it in different ways, and we'll all hold it consciously or unconsciously depending on who we are and what's going on and how we're navigating, right? um, but we're all at that choosing where we want to choose expansion. And so we have to, since out there doesn't get out there till we put it out there, right? We go through that choosing, we've got to get rid of the distortions within us. And so the distortions within us are released or buffed off, or chiseled here or there, or we let it go however we do it, right? And then so that we see that then coming off, so we can match up. We can say, oh, okay, there's our evidence. That's seeing that, and how we react to that lets us clean more of it up, clean more of that distortion out. You gave the example of the thing that you said to that being, when you're having that conversation. Well, that being called you forth so that their soul could have a conversation with them, and you were the conduit for it. That's where that co-creation comes up. Remember, because you're the only one, and in there they're the only one, and they brought you to them to have that conversation. So again, that's one of those great ways to describe in an actual event that you experienced, of how we clear the inside, by bringing things to us. So that's where the correlation between the inside and the outside comes in. And how we navigate. The other thing you said that was interesting, because I heard at least one person saying, well, they liked how you were talking about how you get up in the morning first thing and you're noticing things, and you're the way that you described it, you were noticing, meeting, and reaching for things that were more expansive. And the being that spoke up was saying, well, yeah, but sometimes I get frustrated or sometimes I get angry about something. And that's beautiful. As long as you don't stay in it and really get down and dirty playing with it. But if you integrate it, if you use it as a way to buff up and just feel it and experience it and go, okay, well, that's interesting. Why am I feeling that? Or what elicited that from me? Or where is the intersection between I was noticing this and that was, kind of expansive, and now I'm noticing this, right? Because again, that's one of those things when people first waking up thinking, oh, I'm only supposed to think good thoughts. I can't. And, and okay, well, that'll drive you nuts really quick. Because as soon as you do that, then you think more, you beat yourself up for thinking these things, and now you're really on a cycle. So,
What
but if
resistance
you,
is.
right, so if you can notice it and use it as a way, as a buffing tool, or like I said, some chiseling or a chainsaw, or okay, now you need some dynamite, just blow that part up off, right? The distortions, it gets rid of it. It's only when we don't do it consciously that we spin and spin and spin it. And that's not integration. That's just now, wallowing in whatever that frequency is that's not serving us, because we're doing it in a kind of a mindless loop, which is actually pulled in. If you again noticed and played with it, you'd see it's pulling in a lot of programming, a lot of what I used to refer to with Sheila with it is the shielding on the programming. So as you start to pay attention, you start to notice, you start to wake up to things, and you're cluing into what's really going on, and as you're breaking out of that, but the programming, the indoctrination, the frequency kind of reining into a lower vibrational frequency, and all the things in that neighborhood, and a lower constricted consciousness field, there's a shielding on that mechanism, kind of like a wire might have a shielding on it, right? So that it's preventing you from making that spark of insight, that spark of recognition, right? That spark of, oh, okay,
Yes.
right? The spark that's wanting to really go for the alchemical epiphanies, right?
Yes.
So that
Yes.
shielding on the programming is engaging. Warning, they're waking up. Warning, they're gonna put the piece of work, right? Right? And so that's a mechanism to help thwart that, right? So if
Help worth waking up.
yes. So again, it's one of those just sublimely beautiful ways that it's engineered, much like the thing of co-opting the symbols and the symbology, right? So if someone's thinking, oh, I can only think good thoughts, so only fluffy bunny, because that's the way it is, right? I thought a bad thought. Oh my God, right? That's a great way for that shielding to come in, because now you're spinning on, oh, I did it wrong, can't do this, right? So where's your frequency? Your frequency is constricted again. Your frequency is you're small. Your frequency is I can't get it right. I don't have these chemical epiphanies. I don't have this magical stuff. I just, right? Okay, well, if you're wanting to go in that route, because that's where you're diving into instead of integrating it, then the programming is working great, and the shielding has brought you back. It's roped you back into the thing. It's
Yes.
brilliant.
Wow. Yes. And I love the way that you're able to articulate that. That's brilliant.
Well, I spent, let's see, I'm 50, gonna be 56, I think. So I spent many, many decades playing with that and figuring out, going, oh, hey, note to self, come up with a new plan.
Yes, I'm 55 as well.
Yeah. So that's, but right now everybody is expanding so fast, and which is cool because each being is an integral, necessary, nay, essential component to all of this being unwound and unbound. Wherever they are at in that process is the absolute, sublimely delicious, perfect place in this moment that a drop of that and this being here is all needed to have this go forward. And they're waking up at exactly the right moment for them
Beautiful.
and how they wanted to do it, you know. And that's how we do it. If right now, if you're not waking up, if you're not having these feelings and the sensory array coming in and then kind of noticing in a different change, then you're working incredibly hard to thwart it. You yourself are working incredibly hard to thwart it, and it's exhausting. Because the whole flow. I mean, think of if you've ever seen, maybe you've seen a nature film on Niagara Falls or Victoria Falls over in Africa, where it's just this incredible volume of water. Well, that's what the energy is rushing. It's just this incredible volume. And so to turn and go upstream against that takes a lot. But that's another example of that you're not small. If you are, something in you is willing yourself to do that and turn against it, somewhere in you have this plan. There's something that's going to do what you described for yourself, what you laid out for yourself that you wanted to do. Maybe it's so that you go and you get leaped downstream several light years, and that was the expansion ride that you wanted to take.
Wow. It's kind of mind blowing for me is to think about, BZ and Jeanie and all the other beings having their own experience of expansion and integration, but at the same time, all being the same.
Yes.
All that is, for me to comprehend that, I can't. This piece of meat up here just doesn't function that way. But in my heart, I feel it and I know it to be right. So, yeah.
Yeah, so if someone just said, can you pull it down a little linear, what Jeanie just said? So yes, you described it beautifully. Again, it's that heart-centered. It's the not trying to think it, because, okay, now your head really hurts and it's a super migraine trying to figure that out. So what I would describe actually is probably make people's head hurt a little bit, but hopefully give a little bit of a linear thing is, so we are all one, we are all source in individual embodiments, right? If we're looking at the linear level. And since there's only one of us here, Jeanie called forth this conversation. And from that perspective, pulled me here and co-created with that energy to create the conversation that she has. BZ's done the same, right? People watching and creating in this, being part of this energetic envelope, have each done the same. So if you looked at it, not really accurate, because it's trying to take a multidimensional concept in what is so, into just to linearify it. So this came and this came and this came, right? So another way to say that from a linear perspective is that there are different realities here, right? There's Jeannie's reality and how she is, and she's the only one there, and brings other characters in to do that, whether it's in this conversation or anywhere else, right? Same with me, same with each being who's partaking of this conversation, right? And then where the co-creativeness comes in this particular example, again, from a very linear, wholly inaccurate, but it gives you a placeholder. The co-creation comes in where in your reality bubble and in mine, you're co-creating where each, so this bubble, this sphere of reality for me and for Jeannie, then there's I can't think of the symbol where they overlap. So there's a circle and a circle, and then the part in the middle.
Oh yeah.
Right, where they're overlapping. There's the co-creative coherence of that reality and energetic envelope. Right? Does that make sense? The symbol.
Where the circles intersect.
Yes, right in here.
Yes.
Right. I can't think of what that's called right this moment, but that's what we're
It's called a Venn diagram.
There you go. That's what we're, but the part in the middle where the two happen is how you can be the singularity and all one at the same time. And each creating their own reality. That's how you can have witnesses of the same exact quote unquote experience or something, and you'll have 7 witnesses and you'll have like 8 different descriptions of exactly what happened, the eyewitness accounts, right? Because it's their filter, it's their programming, it's their reality bubble, right? It's all those different things. And then you may get where there's more than the individuals, because then you've got some coherence overlap, and you may be having bilocational consciousness of what was going on.
And when you just said bilocational consciousness, it made me think of that experiment that Einstein did, the spooky action at a distance. You've got this cell here and that one there, and how they interact even though they're
right
physically
right
so far apart. And also, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about fractals and about how, they all are interwoven and, each their own bit, but still all part of the whole.
Yeah. And which is hard because the programming has been so good that we think, no, we're just in this chair and
we're separate.
We're separate. We stop here. The chair is something different. We don't realize that it's all energy. And so that happens in a way that allows us, gives us the power to create unconsciously, because we're creator beings. We're kick-ass creator beings. It's the way it is. Whether you understand it or not, know it or not, believe it or not, doesn't matter. It's so. Yeah. But if we've been doing it in a way that's unconscious because we don't realize we have that capability.
And we have.
And we have, and we do, right? then you can see how these things come to place. It's like if you didn't know about a car and about the gas pedal, right? And you didn't realize it was your foot pushing the gas and it was making the vehicle move. You think, well, someone's moving the vehicle. Who did that? Right? That's a very, very, very rudimentary, simple analogy from a very linear thing. But it's helpful to start to understand, to step into that place. And there is no separation between thought and deed anymore. So you think a thing, and you, which is to give power to, creational force to, and there's no gap in between that, which is a really good thing if you're conscious, a really cool thing, a really expansive thing if you're conscious about how you're doing it and intentional about how you're doing it, because then you can unwind and bind stuff very fast, you can create stuff very fast, you can co-create, you can interact, right? But if you're not noticing and you're not being conscious about it, unless you happen to be on a, you know, on a happy-go-lucky bent, stuff's, cars breaking down, the job's not right, you know, the particular governor of your state in your sector of the area has gotten more restrictions, right? So there are no coincidences in that. That's how we're at the origination, and everything is at the behest of us as the creational force.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Which is spectacular news.
Yes. From my perspective, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I see something, I go, wow, look at what that just showed up. Where was I thinking? What was I feeling? What was I doing when I brought that? Oh yeah, okay, cool. Okay, I'm gonna clean that up. You know, I'm gonna polish that up. I'm gonna go, or realize the gifts in it because it reminded me of a place to, you know, there's distortion, or it brought it in such a way that there's so much, again, creational force unleashed from that, the seemingly, or in a very narrow perspective, bad thing or inconvenient thing, or, you know, kind of a muddy creation thing. But look at all of the clarity that it brought me,
Yes,
right?
that's what I was thinking. Yes.
You know, look, I mean, now we're talking about huge exponential creative force because of that clarity and
Mm-hmm.
seeing that.
Yes.
And again, that's being conscious and having not a scripted or a programmed perspective or perception of something, but your own expert perception,
Yes.
whatever that means for you.
Yes. And you know, I'm very thankful to myself um for my intentionality, um for my meekness, for my persistence, for my seeking and searching and investigating and knowing, um and all of the teachers that I've brought to myself on my path, and wisdom and insight that they have shared that I've resonated with. And one particular teacher, it's like there've been many in a row, but one of the later teachers that I have come across is Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks.
Mm-hmm.
And that, which you were just speaking of, about having an experience that is contrasting, that you're needing to polish, and you know, but that brings forth the clarity. It's like, you know, I'm seeing that. Well, um I had an experience with that this morning, and in that moment, historically, I might have allowed that heartbreak and those tears to cascade and end up having a really bad day. But in that moment, I I don't allow myself really to feel that kind of stuff very much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, maybe it's because I'm um, becoming sensitized or integrated or whatever, to where that's just, it doesn't really come up. But in that moment, I thought, you know, thank you for this contrast that's bringing clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it just passed really quickly. And I don't know what, in the vortex, in the ethers, in the spirit, and you know, in the future that's really the now. That's all created or is going to bring to fruition in my new present moment. But I know I'll recognize it when I see it.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said. And when you were saying that, it's interesting. I saw you kind of like on a trampoline sort of thing, because the energy is a frequency, right? And it moves in waves of energy. Some are constricted, some are expansive, and so there you could see as an undulation. So that may have been a quote unquote downward undulation. So a constricted, right?
Yeah.
And as you were playing with it, as you were surfing it, when it went down, you used that, and the constriction of it is to have a firmness where you boinged off of it, right? And instead of digging into the downward thing, right, and staying down there. So yeah, I mean, and we choose that. We're the only ones who can. It's an inside job. We're the only ones who can. We can say, and this goes back to your topic that you brought, is that navigating of the faith or fear. So in those choosing moments, where will I go, and how do I see the different things as they come up to navigate that? And again, when you're tuning into your discernment and you're coming from your heart, in that navigation, you don't automatically go, oh geez, that was a really bad way to go. You go, wow, okay, and I know where I want to go. So that doesn't necessarily mean that, if I want to go, let's say I want to go up, if I'm looking in the linear, I want to get a higher vibration. I want to get a higher consciousness level, right? I want to get a more expensive thing. So we think from a linear brain, that's up is good, right? Kind of thing. So then we hold that and we say, well, okay, well, this thing that was I may be holding as bad. Well, I took a sharp turn off the path. Not only am I not going straight in the path and I'm not going up, I'm kind of going that way. But your discernment, your way that you navigate it, gives you that ability to go, oh yeah, but the vista from over here, whoa, I didn't see half of that stuff where I was over here. So there's actually, for you in that moment, for all the things that incorporated, going over here and standing, so literally standing over here and looking at it from this angle, I never saw any of that stuff. Whoa. And that's actually a more direct route for each individual being to get to see, to incorporate, to have the vantage point and the array of choosings to then navigate, that may have taken you a very long time if you kept coming just from here. You're that good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's real. It gets more delicious every moment that we play with it, and that we, to say it very linear, cut ourselves a break and go, oh,
Yeah.
wait, you know what I mean? All
Yes.
of that is part of it. It's part of that navigating.
You know, it makes me wonder sometimes, having conversations like this, when you talk about how everything is coming in so fast and how we all have a choice to make and we all have the ability to choose and our inner being is knowing, even though we may not be knowing intellectually. It's like, I feel like no matter where we find ourselves in contrasting moments, no matter where we find ourselves um, in actions that we don't like, I feel like even to the worst degree of the dark, and I've really felt this always, that there is that still small voice that that spark of inner knowing that knows,
Mm-hmm.
that has never gone away, that has always been there, that has always that if you really would just be still and listen to your heart, you would know that that is the way of of less pain, maybe, or whatever. But the faith versus fear, in my experience, I on a linear level had a journey where, well, I was a young Catholic girl and I got pregnant. And so I got married because that's what good Catholic girls do. Or that's the expected thing to do in that situation if you're Catholic. But in my heart, in my gut, in my soul, I felt like that was wrong for me. But I did what I did because I was afraid that I just didn't think that there was any other option in that situation. And so that started me on a path of doing what was expected, what I was obliged to do, what was mandated to do. I mean, all of these things of following someone else's voice, of following the parent, following the pastor, following the priest, following any voice of authority that said that this is what you do in this situation. And even staying with an abusive husband and trying to leave and having a pastor say, you know, this is God's will. This is what you need to do. In my heart, my being's going, no, I need to leave. So I personally have had a lot of hitting my head against the wall, doing the right thing, despite that inner knowing. And
Right.
so, you know, some of in that faith versus fear aspect of it, it's like in my inner being, I truly wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to do God's will. I wanted to do the highest, best thing, which is why I listened to these voices, because I thought, oh, well, you know, these people are good people. They know what's best for me. They're saying this, so that must be what's best for me. And it wasn't. But, you know, and then you have the whole contrast, and, you know, you have these experiences and they create the higher, better thing. So it's all an interesting dance. It's all, you know, at this point, I mean, I was speaking on a linear level when I was talking about the, you know, going through the journey and doing what other people said. But at the same time, that whole conversation on a multi-dimensional level, you can look at it and go, well, yes, you made this choice and you had this pain, but this experience created this expansion. And, you know, so was it really all that bad? Well, no. On 30 years later, looking back at it, I'm going, no, it was the great path, because look
Right.
where I am now and who I am and what I know and how I feel and what I be, and, you know, so the faith versus fear, you know, it is what it is.
And you just gave a beautiful illustration too of, as we talked about before earlier in the conversation, of the faith, but the inner knowing faith,
right,
true source
not the
faith,
religious faith.
not the religious faith.
Yes,
Because,
yes,
you know, and the way you described it, you know, you well, for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, you beautifully laid out the dichotomy and the divergence in the two faiths, right? And
yes,
the the
yes,
the God's will, which is Anu, and then source, which was that you knowing where to go,
yes,
right?
yes,
And
yes,
that's part of navigating those things, the symbology and symbolism, that fear and the faith, and what's the, because it's all basically, this conversation has all been about energy frequency and how we're navigating in it from a linear, mostly linear roadmap to decode it.
I just got chilled. Did you feel it? Woo! Woo! What a woo!
It's a roller coaster ride. Yep.
Right. I love you. I love
Cool.
you.
Well,
Woo.
I think that zippy roller coaster part is a good place to end this particular energetic envelope.
Yes. Oh man, my heart is like overflowing right now with joy,
Cool.
expansion.
Very cool.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
sublimely delicious, isn't it? It just really is.
Mhm.
Each moment, no matter where it is we play, and yeah,
Yes.
I love it. Well, cool. Well, thanks for coming with the topic and
Thank
the way to
you.
play. It's great fun. Great.
Yes.
All right. So there's ways to get in touch. And I can put, if Jeannie, if you want to get in touch, someone can email me and we'll get in touch with Jeannie that way.
Okay.
And if you can, if you feel like it was helpful and of value, go ahead and like the um, video, share it around, and maybe there's other beings who want to help, a little help navigating things, and they're calling this forth, and you can help them find it. So have a great day, everybody. I love you.
I love you.